Alright. One thing I always have control, no matter what matter, is Tourettes. No winking and blinking. No making funny noises. I'm not doing that with my wrist. A little bit weird to people out. So, anytime I'm in public, I have to try to control it so people don't make bad assumptions of me over things that aren't a choice. This is one of the things my family doesn't ever consider. How many people are mean to me just because they have bad assumptions? And there's a lot of things people do that's mean that they don't intend to be mean. They just have their own assumptions they can come off of. And thanks y'all for having me. I'll probably be back tomorrow.
All right, brother. Yeah, good luck with all that, man.
Oh, God, right? Thank you.
Sure.
My back is pretty screwed up. And that makes it so that if people have bad assumptions or they just had a bad day and want somebody to take it out on, running away isn't exactly an option for me. I just gotta take it. That's something that our politicians ain't got to deal with. They don't just have to take it. I mean, our president is protected by people with full auto machine guns, for Christ's sake. Man, I got such a fucked up back. Jesus, this sucks. People keep telling me, give it to God, give it to God, give it to God. I saw and heard Brendan Dickinson try, who's that hit? Trying to give it to God for years. Between giving it to God and them stage 4 pain meds, she gave into them stage 4 pain meds. Oh. Gross. She even said so. She thinks they're gross. I agree. A lot of people agree. Not just gross as in flavor, but gross as in having the need for such a thing. The way it makes you feel. One of the things with Brenda Dickinson, I knew if I explained that, yeah, gross, I puked a little bit this morning. I'm sorry about that, by the way. I don't know why I'm apologizing to you guys. Anyway, I don't want people getting in trouble. There's mannered places that was a good catch, or at least I'm gonna pretend it was. Wasn't exactly a matrix maneuver. It was more of a, oh wow, that literally just fell right into my hand. for me, having to run around all these different places, can't really stay in one place for very long. If you do, people get kind of offended that you're there, and they whine and they complain until you leave. So it's best to leave before they do that, but what do you do when you have nowhere to go? And you got a severe lack of options, and people always think that you got more options than you do. They always think that they know better about the situation than the person who's living it. And then it becomes all about them. No matter what you're going through, their stuff is more important than yours, and that is understandable to some degree, unless you actually care about somebody. If you actually care about somebody, you make the time. You don't make it about them, do you? You don't make the time. When one of your friends is being abused, what's your way of dealing with it? Tell them they got to deal with it themselves. And that's how we all end up screwed. That's a nice ride. We're in a situation now where there's a lot of people who their idea of homelessness, they're living right now. There's a lot of people that the only reason they have an address to write down is because at 36 or 38 years old, they're back living with their mommy and daddy. And you say, oh, those fucking moochers. No, mommy and daddy can't make the bills neither. Everything's just getting too expensive. That's what it's like being homeless. Everything is more expensive. It's more difficult because you have to work with a lot less. There's a lot of folks who tell me about how horrible it is that a lot of these single moms have it. And every time I think to myself, what about all them single dads? One woman was suggesting to me that every man has the opportunity to go out there and get himself a girlfriend that'll raise his kids for him. Huh? I'm told that's misogynistic thinking, and then I have women telling me that that's what I should do. Well, here's the thing about a lot of women with that suggestion. I don't have any kids. I don't have any kids of my own. Breeding was always a really gross notion to me. But the way I grew up, why would it come across as a pleasant thing? And I hear at the McDonald's, they were pretty understanding of what I was doing and the fact that I couldn't really do anything on the weekend. It's Monday though. And a lot of the calls that I need to make from my vehicle, of course. There's a lot of stuff I can't talk about inside of a Starbucks or a McDonald's or even a public library. You'd think of all those places that the public library would probably be the easiest, but no, it's not. You know, when people at most of these businesses or whatever, when there's an issue, they'll come and tell you. And I already know what the issue is before anybody talks to me. It's that I'm there for so long, I don't spend very much. And a lot of these places, it's not the owner that runs the place, it's a manager who runs the place. The owner is the person with the money. That's what they do. They're money people, not so much the working class. So a lot of these places, they're not run here by who you'd expect them to be. You know, there's managers here that spent time in prison. There's managers here that have been to the funny farm. as you guys want to call it. Not so funny. So a lot of those people, they may feel for you, and they think it sucks, but they also got a job to do. They don't want to go hungry in this economy. They don't want their families going hungry in this economy. But you think only single white males with no dependents end up in prison or jail? And that doesn't just affect you, that affects your family. That affects their ability to eat. Eating is important when you're a couple even. And it takes about 3 full-time jobs to keep a roof over your head for the overhead and still be able to make it. And here you are, one person down. You have to do it with one less person. Plus that person, it gets awful lonely in there not seeing you people. So you're going to want to visit. You want to send them some money. Put it on their books so they can get some commissary. I wouldn't have gotten commissary in most places if there'd have been money on my books. I would have bought phone calls. Yeah, you have to buy phone calls. If you can't afford bail, you have to buy phone calls. And they always make bail expensive enough that you can't fucking afford it. If you're homeless, who cares, right? If you're homeless, you must be mentally ill, you must be a drug addict, blah, blah, blah. Even the people who understand still end up doing things that are not moral because they don't want to get in trouble. After being out on the streets, that sometimes you ain't lucky enough to still be in working shape after being out on the streets. Sometimes people fuck you up, mentally and physically. I got a bunch of phone calls I gotta make today. I don't exactly have a safe place to make those phone calls from. A lot of times, like I say, I gotta take a phone call when it comes. And I gotta try to make phone calls not in public. I also gotta set up my computer in order to look at it so that I can explain stuff to people. Library is public, McDonald's is public, Denny's is public. People don't want to hear that stuff when they're in there eating with their kids. Old people don't want to hear about that when they're trying to show off their Vietnam veteran hat. Old ladies don't want to hear about that when they're in there gossiping about everybody else in town. Racist old bastards don't want to hear that while they're complaining and gossiping about how the women come in and gossip, and so they all leave because they don't want to hear women gossip. And I'm thinking to myself, but you're gossiping. Those guys were complaining. Those ladies come in for maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half, I guess, to come in there and gossip, and all those guys, all them old men run away. They'll let them women gossip in peace, and they'll wait until those women leave, and then they'll start gossiping. I'll make it public. I'm not gonna go talking trash, starting rumors like that and not back it up. problem is not having a place to actually sit down and organize all this and go through all of it without having to worry about, well, that exact thing happening. Since I got Tourette's syndrome, people don't really understand what Tourette's syndrome is. They think when I'm cursing that that's Tourette's syndrome. No, it's not. Only in the movies, folks. Only in the movies. Only 30% of people with Tourette's syndrome have vocal tics. That's the guttural sounds, the oral sounds, or words that people repeat. Sometimes it's a gulping sound. But only like 5% of those cases, only 5% of those with vocal tics actually do that cursing thing. 5%, that is not a significant amount. That's less than 2% of the overall Tourette's syndrome population, or population of people with Tourette's syndrome. Now, for me, the more nervous I am, like the longer I'm somewhere, the more likely it is that I'm going to have the bosses come up and talk to me about being there so long. Not so much of a difficulty if I'm out in my vehicle most of the time, unless I never buy anything. So I make sure I buy something. But I got to have my computer plugged in order for that to work. The outlets are off in there. You guys might not know it, but I puke a lot. I get physically ill because I don't have any loved ones. I mean, I'm in my vehicle all the time wishing I had someone who actually cared about my mental health, about my physical health. I can't protect myself from these things. You guys talk about elder abuse and how the courts are helping them get away with it. You talk about child abuse and how the courts are helping them get away with it. You talk about sexual abuse and how the courts are helping them get away with it. You talk about how you're too busy when it happens to somebody else. And then you're just going to complain in general that it's happening, doing nothing useful. This is where BLM keeps screwing up. I'm told that it's not just about black people, it's for all of us. No, it's just for people of color. If you white and broke, white and homeless, black and homeless, brown and homeless, nobody cares. You're homeless. Throughout most of my life, the only people who ever accepted me were, well, all right, I got into a lot of fights growing up, mostly because I was white. I got beaten up a lot, and usually after a fight or two, people respected me because I fought. Eventually, I fought really mean because I was sick of people coming in, seeing the small white kid in the facility and attacking him. So I learned what hurt, and if it hurt me a lot, that's what I used, or at least tried to. And until my nose grew, that was around puberty. When my nose grew, that's when my strategy had to change. It's not that my strategy changed, it's that I flinched. And everybody, all of a sudden, when I have a big nose, everybody just wants to punch me in the nose. And they end up punching me in the forehead because I flinch. Bad idea. But people shouldn't be swinging at me to begin with. People shouldn't be trying to assault me to begin with. I wonder what notification this one is. Granny Ford. She's the cousin of someone I'm not friends with anymore. He thought he was going to hook me up with his cousin. That didn't exactly work out. That's right, I wasn't exactly interested in hooking up with anybody. Anyway, here at the McDonald's, everybody's super nice to me. But I spent the weekend in there. I did have to come out and make some phone calls and also make some videos so that I could calm down. I mean, see, here's the thing, is that you don't get to just walk away from something like this. There's a lot of people that are mad that I spoke up about them. I mean, in such a hateful way. I even recorded the fact that I told the truth in their voices. They want to be extra angry about that. But I posted it up in its entirety. See, all these web sleuth groups, they want to pick out little bits and pieces and say, oh, well, see, he's a bad guy, he's a bad guy. We had to do all this great and wonderful shitty investigation. You didn't investigate shit. You didn't come to the source. You just assume I'm fucking retarded. That's the reason people hurt me, is because they assume that nobody's going to listen. They're right. Their assumption is correct. You guys are just going to assume. That's why friends and family are so important. There's friends and family who knew that I had Tourette's syndrome, and rather than speaking up about that, they just let people continue to treat me like I was a druggie. Meanwhile, why wouldn't they? Most of them are druggies. They don't care that you're getting treated that way. They figure it's fair. They're getting treated that way. It's fair. Everybody ought to be treated that way. No, that's not actually true. Everybody doesn't deserve to be treated that way just because you're treated that way. Just because you're an alcoholic who does stupid things and does selfish things because you're an alcoholic doesn't mean that everybody deserves to be treated like they're doing selfish things and being a selfish person and being an alcoholic. Most sexual abuse, most murders, most beatings in the United States start with drugs or alcohol, primarily alcohol. Alcohol is present. Then we got the fact that police act with impunity. When it comes to your rights versus the homeless have no rights, and they know it. Nobody's going to listen to the homeless. If they did, they wouldn't be homeless. The police target the same people as serial killers, the homeless. When members of BLM get back from one of their hate rallies, when they want somebody to take it out on, who have they been taking it out on? Little kids at bus stops. Little white kids at bus stops, on buses, on trains, and homeless people. Homeless black people, homeless white people, homeless Hispanics. After every one of those BLM rallies, homeless people were abused by black people and white people. Those folks had a lot of aggression, wanted to not get in trouble for racial tension. Too many people for that. If you want to go starting a race war as a white guy at a rally like that, you might get beaten to death. In the least bit, they're going to hurt you a lot. Same thing the other way around. Why are we making this racial tension? We got all these redneck hillbillies blaming the government and black people. We got BLM blaming the government and white people. But we're all victims of the same government. A government that does not represent the people. Doesn't care about the people. Will take any excuse that they can to protect their own. And who are their own? Those who have the same bias. There's a lot of folks who are talking about the pedophilia in the United States. And many of these people are mentally fucked up from it. They got PTSD, and a lot of you can't tell the difference between PTSD and delusions, or post-traumatic stress disorder and schizophrenia, or PTSD and autism. See, there's what are called trauma responses. I've exhibited a lot of trauma responses, and people, well, because I'm a male, pretend like I must be a violent person. I must be out to hurt people. I must be all sorts of, well, craziness. It's all craziness. It's all assumptions, insinuations, ignorance, and stupidity. I didn't wake up one morning and go, you know what? Today would be a great day to have Tourette's syndrome. I didn't wake up one morning and go, you know what? I've decided I'm going to be autistic. I didn't wake up one morning and say, hey, I got a great idea. This is a wonderful idea. How about if my mom and dad, who can't stay off the cocaine, get locked up when I'm a 4-year-old? Y'all don't think this stuff out. When you go blaming the victim, you don't think it out. When you go trying to accuse me of being a shoplifter in 1983, all right. And nearly all of my court dates, they tried pulling shit like that. You damn right I spoke up. Some of them I was told I wasn't allowed to speak. Rawlins, Wyoming, I didn't give a shit. I was like, 1983? Dude, I was 2 years old for most of 1983. What do you mean, shoplifting? You're out your damn mind. Alright, my phone just dimmed, which means I got 5% battery or less, and I need my phone for today. Fuck. So what I gotta do is either turn on my car, which is nearly out of gas. I'm gonna move it as soon as I'm done with my coffee, which is mostly done. External battery. Anyway, I understand the not running in and out of the building all the damn time, doing all these things I gotta get done. Unfortunately, I gotta get it done, and I don't have a place of my own to do that from. So then I'm stuck in public with people's assumptions, or I'm stuck going to services where the kind of people that you guys want to pretend I am, those people are actually at these services. Nobody does anything about them when they're violent or when they're harassing an innocent man. That situation with Farnsworth, for example. Robert Farnsworth. That should have never happened. That guy shouldn't have been beaten up. I guess a lot of people beat him up. I'm not able to defend myself very well. And even he can tell. This whole situation should have been dealt with by professionals. But even the professionals didn't want to act professional. They wanted to run off of their assumptions and their bias. Nobody backed me up. I told the truth. I got audio recordings with these people that show I told the truth. But how do I get that into court? All my money is constantly spent running around from place to place to place to place. By the time any of the services kick in, I've already been victimized to the point that I need to move. I need someone to stop and understand the situation. The longer it takes to do that, the more evidence is allowed to be destroyed by police. When it comes to their body cams, in most places, you only have a year to get those before, of course, they're allowed to destroy them. I made a lot of my decisions based on lies from police, lies from local sheriff's departments, lies from Nebraska State Patrol. Nebraska State Patrol can't make me go to Scott DaCosta to turn in Scott DaCosta, and yet they did. You know whose job it is to investigate that stuff? Nebraska State Patrol. In between 2017, at the very beginning, and, well, even today, Nebraska State Patrol, when they finally pretended like they might do something, they worked together with Scott DaCosta to have me arrested on bullshit charges. This is after I was already assaulted by Scott DaCosta and Nebraska State Trooper Lassen for trying to turn in Scott DaCosta. No matter what, they weren't going to let me turn in Scott DaCosta or his deputies. No matter what, trying to make Western Nebraska look squeaky clean. How about you actually clean it up? How about you actually do something about those crooked cops? How about you do something about Polly Olson? Oh, yeah, she wasn't a cop, and thank goodness you did something about her. Michelle Quinn, female sheriff and a lesbian. Well, Nebraska State Patrol did something about her, too, didn't they? She's not sheriff anymore. Goes to show you that it ain't just men who beat up their girlfriends. Both of those women had positions of power, and they knew they would get away with it. Same thing with Sarah Nelson, except she didn't get away with it. There weren't any good people in any of the places that I went. There were no good people. There were some nice people, but no good people. Y'all don't stop to consider how your help will hurt someone when they're trying to explain to you that something that you are doing is hurtful to them. Other people doing exactly what you're doing has been used to harm me in the past. No, I cannot accept harm and call it help. Your assumptions of Tourette's syndrome, or even worse, your assumptions of autism, are literally getting autistic people killed all over the United States, often by law enforcement, and you simply don't care. We ain't even taking care of our own people. There's no place for us to stay. Every time we're told that we're not welcome somewhere because we're not young enough, we're not pretty enough, we're not rich enough, that costs us the money that we need to try to be saving to start ourselves a new life somewhere else. But nobody wants you here. Nobody wants you here. Nobody wants you here. You might be a junkie. You might be a junkie. You might be a junkie. Then these people want to tell us how we need to feel bad for all the junkies. Well, what about people like me out here? Who are those people going to take advantage of when they can't take advantage of their families anymore? It's going to be people like me. Now, there's a difference between taking advantage of someone and taking advantage of an opportunity. If someone says they're going to help you in the way that you need, a lot of folks say, man, you should jump on that opportunity. Well, you know what? A lot of time it isn't an opportunity. It's somebody thought they had a good idea in their head, but when it came time to actually follow through, they assumed somebody else was going to help you first. So then you end up with, well, like in my case, hundreds of people that know I'm telling the truth, but ain't none of them coming forward. I'm not that important to them. There's a lot of folks who don't like the fact that I told the truth, or especially when I recorded them and posted the truth up for the whole world to hear. The whole world doesn't want to hear it. They just want a scapegoat. My dad wanted to be angry because there's like 104 people who watched the video that my dad was in. There's like 3 of them all together. And he wanted to be angry. I'm like, Dad, you should listen to the slander about me. All right, and we're not talking about 104 people seeing it. We're talking about literally millions of views. My dad doesn't care if it's true or not. What he wanted was his voice taken down. A lot of people wanted their voices taken down. They didn't want people to know that they were involved. They wanted to... This is something about the whole paranoia thing. Like, you guys want to keep pretending like because I'm paranoid of things happening that have happened in the past, that it means that I'm crazy and delusional and schizophrenic and all sorts of other stuff. No, there's reasons why I'm afraid of these things. There's a reason that I'm afraid to go to the police alone. There's a reason I can't turn in the evidence alone. There are reasons that I can't just hang out at the library all day. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. They don't care. I'm dingy and nasty and I can get away with it for a day or two. But libraries get bad quick. And in a library, they're a lot less likely to come talk to you first. They're a lot more likely to call the police, and then the cops come in, and it's a awkward moment of, all right, well, my computer will take 45 minutes. You've got 5. Fucking assholes. and they stand there like this. You see, that's the thing about police officers. They are taught how to intimidate you and how to kill you. Why do our cops in 6 weeks' time, why is half of that spent shooting at human silhouettes? Meanwhile, it's not your son, the pedophile, your son, the druggie, your son who's got 8 kids with 8 different women, because he's also selling them drugs. It ain't him you go after, it's people like me. It's not the father of your kids, the one that molested them until they cut on themselves. It's not him that you take it out on, it's someone like me. Might as well be any man. You have the prerogative, right? How many times in my life has my mother used this woman's prerogative thing as an excuse to abuse the wrong person? Thank goodness I didn't grow up with my mother. But when I was with her, that's always how it was. Do as I say, not as I do. Now, a lot of people are understanding sort of the situation. But when it comes to missing people and child abuse, people are afraid to get involved. They're afraid to try to put a stop to it. You got no idea how many people have used Epstein as an excuse. Look at Epstein. He was raping kids all the way back in the 80s. And they still let him go. They let him go in Florida and Louisiana. Or the George Floyd situation. Look how many people had to come together to get something done about George Floyd. Yeah, and look at the situation with Zaid Atkinson. Or Sammy Leon Lawrence IV. Neither of them are dead. Both of them were abused by Waylon Lolatai. Waylon Lolatai was the one with the shotgun in the Zaid Atkinson situation. The big black man with the shotgun. Very hateful man. As far as I'm aware, I'm the first person that he assaulted in 2018. He assaulted at least 6 other people who were either homeless or that he had assumed to be homeless by the end of the year. The cops think that they can act with impunity because they can. And they can because all you do is bitch about it. When it happens to somebody else, somebody that you know, you don't want to get involved. You don't want to get in trouble. So rather than help show the examples of these things happening, it's relegated to conspiracy theories. That's magic unicorns and tinfoil hats and shit like that. My dad could explain that I got Tourettes syndrome. It's not a choice and it's not drug use. My older brother could explain that too. He always tells this story about how I beat up 2 of his friends because they were bullying me. I don't remember it that way. I remember it was he wanted to start an argument because I used to go, and it's really tough to stop once I start. So my older brother, when he wanted to start an argument, he'd just do that. if he was losing the argument, or 2 plus 2 is 5. If I don't say 2 plus 2 is 5, he beats me up. Might makes right. Of course, logistically, that doesn't work. That doesn't work out, does it? I'm starving. Well, I say you're not starving. I say we're surrounded by food. We're surrounded by a wonderful banquet. Meanwhile, you're out in the middle of the Sahara. No, I'm really starving. I really don't have any food. None of us have any food. Well, if I can beat you up, it means that we're surrounded by food. Yeah, that don't work. If you're being bombed over in Kosovo or Kiev or wherever, denying the dropping of the bombs isn't going to make the bombs not be dropping. I wonder how many people over there have prayed, how many millions of people, possibly even a billion across the planet, have prayed for an end of the bombing in Kiev. You'd think it would have ended a long time ago if them prayers were working. If prayers worked, people wouldn't be putting sanctions on these nations. They wouldn't be denying these nations access to military equipment and hardware. A lot of Russia's equipment is based on American equipment, requires American components. We got soldiers who want to pretend like anybody who isn't a soldier. We got veterans who want to pretend anybody who wasn't a veteran shouldn't be allowed to vote, shouldn't be allowed any basic rights. They should basically be a communist community. There's the soldiers who matter, and then there's the rest of the people who owe everything to the soldiers. Well, without intelligent people, those soldiers would have nothing. Without innovators and thinkers and people who use their imagination, we wouldn't have a wheel. We'd have never sharpened sticks. We'd have never cultivated our own crops. And people had to use their imaginations, and that's probably the strongest thing that we have. Imagination and, of course, education. Albert Einstein, Nikola Tesla, both said the math is not important. Well, it is, isn't it? We know that the math is important. But that's not all they said. They said the math is not important compared to the imagination. The imagination is what's important. You can be the best mathematician on the planet, but if you got no imagination, you're not going to get very far. There's no application to it. What is the purpose of the numbers? Is it just simply to mess around with numbers, or is there a purpose? That's where autistic people come in. Dreamers dream and builders build, but it takes an artist to bridge the gap. Now, for me, obviously, the safety of myself and the community around me is important. It's what I strive for. But also, you get to see how rather than take these serious issues actually seriously, people are numb to it. They just kind of, oh, well, it sucks that happened, but you're a bum, move along. I never asked to be different. I never asked to be abused because I'm different. I never asked for the bias that you hold or the assumptions that you make. I never asked for abuse. Well, that's not true anymore, is it? Was I really asking for abuse, or was I asking for people to keep their word? I wanted these folks to either leave me alone and go away. Now, mind you, I don't mind being in the same environment as someone who doesn't like me but doesn't start any trouble, doesn't create any drama, and leaves me alone. No problem. Now, if you want to start pretending like I would hurt you or your family, that's because you're a fucking nut job. That's because you have something sick in your head and you think it's okay. You think it's okay to pass judgment on somebody without taking a look at both sides. As far as the victimization of the American people, it's not whites doing it to everybody. It's not blacks doing it to everybody. It's not Asians doing it to everybody, or Muslims or Christians doing it to everybody. It's each of these groups being at each other's throats instead of working together for what's important, our rights. Jesus was about humanity. Now, one of the videos that I made was about how everyone's going to die. Now, this, of course, is according to the Bible, according to Jesus. So, of course, because I'm speaking about Jesus, people want to pretend that I'm comparing myself to Jesus as if I'm Jesus, and I'm absolutely not. And then they want to pretend that I'm some delusional nut job who thinks he's Jesus. I absolutely do not. So why do I bring up the Jesus so much? Because this is what people think helps. If they push Jesus, 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 Jesus. If I pray to Jesus hard enough, I'll really win the lottery. Is that how it is? If I pray to Jesus hard enough, the Eagles will win the Super Bowl? No. That ain't how it works. Now, a lot of these Christians wanted to threaten to kill me and threaten to kill my family and threaten bodily mutilation and threaten a whole bunch of other stuff. A bunch of very horrible things. And it's somehow magically okay for them to do these things. And then there's the Christians who wanted to help me and they just couldn't stop pushing the Jesus, the Jesus, the Jesus. Well, how about we stop pushing the Jesus and maybe do what Jesus would have done? The right thing. Did he push for you to go to the synagogue? Or would he preach from a mountain? Would he preach from a shore of a lake? Or from a boat just offshore? So when he has that speech and he's talking about, well, he goes through a list of all the people that will die. And basically, he says that everyone's going to die. Every single one of us, all of us, are going to die. But then, of course, the predators, what did they wanted to do? They wanted to pretend that I was threatening to kill them. That is the furthest thing from what I was saying. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter because they had positions of power and control, and I'm homeless. They can force me into a bunch of hoops I got to jump through. I am expected to jump through as a disabled and homeless American. Expensive hoops. If I was to jump through all the hoops that I am expected to jump through, I'd be spending between $1,600 and $3,200 a month. I don't get $3,200 a month or even $1,600 a month. And what money I do get, instead of taking care of myself with it, I'm forced to spend it on stuff that if I get this or I get that or I go here or I go there, and then magically once I get there or once I talk to these people, then everything is going to be okay and all my problems are going to go away. No, none of these government agencies or people who take your tax dollars are going to do anything good with those tax dollars unless you are involved. If your friend or family member has to go through that, they cannot go through it alone. They will be denied. And I can show you examples of that. I can show you why it is that when people needed help, I went in with them to where they needed to go. When they had a disability that they were trying to explain and they were cut off, I was there to verify. When they were cut off, that's not appropriate. All right, this is a disability and you do need to listen to them. You do not get to do that. Now, these places, that is often enough for them to stop, but sometimes they will start an attitude and start playing victim. This is the precursor to playing victim. As soon as you confront them, and this is what you're supposed to do, you're supposed to do this immediately. When they start doing something that they know that they're not supposed to do, and you know they're not supposed to do, when they start doing that to a victim, you need to speak up immediately, right away. Now, they will either back off and actually assist you the way they're supposed to, or they will start playing victim. And this starts off with them getting an attitude, playing like they're insulted, like they know what their job is and you don't. There's no possible way that you could have ever gotten a hold of the information needed to know what the laws are concerning the people you're dealing with. They want to pretend like you're, what do you call it? Being out of control. As soon as you confront them, they start playing this. As soon as you confront them, you tell them, hey, this is illegal. What you're doing is illegal. And you use this voice. And it's automatically you don't know what my job is. You're getting an attitude, this is inappropriate and you need to leave. Fuck, I'll curse on my way out the door then. Jesus, you're a dumb son of a bitch. On the bright side, I recorded this shit. You didn't ask my permission, state of Nebraska, but I don't have to ask your permission. I'm also a disabled and at-risk adult, or a disabled adult in an at-risk situation. I can literally record 24 hours of a day, 7 days a week. Protection, because I am alone. I have no advocate. I have no guardian. I have no friends or family who actually give a shit. Do they give a shit about what's going on, or do they give a shit about telling me what to do? Do they give a shit about getting a hold of me and seeing if I'm all right, or do they give a shit about ignoring me until I have pestered them enough? Anyway, good to be with you. Thanks for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Remember, you are your brother's keeper and no victim left behind. Not even if it's a homeless person that you want to assume as a junkie, assume as a druggie, assume as a child molester or a rapist. Y'all are sick. Everybody deserves the right to defend themselves. nobody should be considered guilty until proven innocent. And that's exactly what it is when you're homeless. Every single American who is not fighting for the rights of homeless people, none of you deserve your rights because they're not rights, they're privileges.